Hello everybody, I'm Daniel, also known as Danixon. Today I'll be drawing a punk/anarchist version of Amy Rose from the Sonic the Hedgehog series. This was somewhat inspired by Fennell's punk drawing of the same character. I also have been getting into more politically charged music like Rage Against the Machine and some Jeff Rosenstock records. This ultimately made me choose to incorporate some of the politics into the fashion of the character, because you can't have punk without politics. Now that the reasoning is out of the way, we can start with the explanation of what it is that I'm doing here. Well, for starters, I have a pencil sketch that I pasted into an Illustrator document, and I'm carefully tracing that with the pen tool. Yes, this was done with a mouse. Personally, I prefer doing the line art like this because it creates perfectly smooth curved lines, and I can change the width of said lines much more easily. For those who have never used Illustrator or a similar vector-based art program, there is something called a width tool, which you can use to make certain parts of a line thick and other parts thin. This entire line art process takes around 45 minutes to an hour. I could probably do it faster if I used Photoshop for everything, but I can't make everything look as perfect like I can with Illustrator. After the line art is finished, I then paste it into Photoshop. This is where I'll be doing most of the coloring and shading. I start with filling in each part of the drawing, like the eyes, fur, arms, shoes, etc. Each part is put in its own layer, and I make sure to name every layer now to avoid confusion later on. In this step, I just use flat colors and try to get everything to look good together. Now comes the fun part of the art process, the shading. The way I shade things isn't very complex. It's mostly just adding the shadows to an object and then adding some highlights if needed. I try to stay somewhat consistent on where the light is coming from. In this drawing, it's coming down and from the left. I won't claim that I'm any good at shading, but I think I've gotten good at basic shading like this. A good tip for all you young artists out there is when it comes to shading, try to slightly shift hues for the shadows and highlights. For example, when I have to shade the red in Amy's top, I shift the hues slightly towards purple. Even a subtle shift in hue can make the shadows look more appealing. The reason that I chose to make Amy's outfit composed of blacks and reds is that those are the colors of anarcho-communism. I could have chosen yellow instead of red, but that would imply quite the silly ideology. Also, the boots took so long to draw and shade. I had to look for so many references of boots just to get them to look right. If I'm being honest, I think they look a bit too big, but I can't really change them now. The fingerless gloves and studded bracelets have no meaning. I just thought they looked cool and are popular among punks and people that have alternative fashion styles. One last thing before we move on to the background. Despite how basic and simple this outfit is, I still researched as much as possible about punk and alternative fashion. I had considered crust punk, some more skater fashion styles, maybe a tattoo and some fishnets, but at the end of the day, I just decided on this outfit instead. It wasn't a waste of time. I still liked learning about punk fashion since it's pretty cool. Here, I noticed that the whole pose looked unnatural without the left arm. The original idea was that the left arm was hidden behind the body, but I realized halfway through that no one stands like this. I had to draw the left arm right in the end of the shading process, something I didn't want to do. Usually I want the drawing process to be neatly divided into 3 steps: line art, coloring, and shading. This time I had to go from shading back to line art just to fix a mistake of mine. Honestly, it was a pretty bad mistake, so I'm glad I went back to fix it. Okay, we have finally arrived at the worst part of drawing for me and so many other artists: the background. I personally hate leaving the background blank. Many artists just leave their characters standing in a white void, but I insist there has to be something behind them, even if it's just an abstract shape or shapes. In this case, that's what I ended up doing. I just added a bunch of shapes to the background with a grunge texture I got from Timelapse.com. I also added the text Anarchist Rose because it helped fill in the negative space on the left. What you are looking at is an abridged version of me making the background. In reality, there was a lot of just placing things, trying things out, deleting everything, and starting over. Do as I say and not as I do. Never start a drawing if you don't know what to do for the background. Unless you want to, I'm not your dad. Here we have the finished drawing. If I'm being honest, I don't think it's my best work. I find the background to make it all look cheesy. I mean, it's a punk version of a Sonic character, so it'll always look cheesy. Still, I think the background is to the detriment of the drawing. However, after working on this for over 7 hours, I just have to say it's done and move on. That's a tip for young artists. Sometimes you won't be satisfied with an art piece, but you have to know when to call it quits and move on to a new, hopefully better drawing. Anyway, that's all for this video. If you liked it, I would appreciate it if you gave this video a like and left a comment. This really helps small creators like myself get noticed. I also invite you to check out my art, which can be found in DeviantArt, Instagram, and Reddit. Links can be found in the description below. I also accept commissions, so feel free to message me on any of my socials to place an order. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.